Maybe we'll come to order, ladies and gentlemen. Yep. Let's give them. I call to order the preparatory meeting of the high-level international conference for the peaceful settlement of the question of Palestine and the implementation of the two-state solution.
La France et le Royaume.
France and the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia would like to sincerely thank you for being here today. Welcome to this session. As we indicated in our message we sent via e-delegate on the 16th of May, this preparatory meeting is taking place in the run-up to the high-level international conference for the settlement of the question of Palestine and the implementation of the two-state solution, which will take place, as you know, between the 17th and the 20th of June here in New York. It will begin with working groups between the 17th and 18th of June and will be followed by a high-level segment.
Opportunity for us to brief participants on the preparation process of the conference. The co-chairs of the 8 working groups will inform participants about their consultations with states and other relevant stakeholders. Participants will be able to make operational statements during these interactive discussions. After the presentation of the working group, we also invite delegations to submit written comments to the contact points from our missions. Their email addresses have been included in our letters circulated via e-delegate. And now it gives me great pleasure to give the floor to the President of the General Assembly.
Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I commend France and the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia for convening today's meeting and for their tireless efforts as co-chairs of the high-level international conference for the peaceful settlement of the question of Palestine and the implementation of the two-state solution. The international conference to be held in June this year is a crucial opportunity that we must seize to chart an irreversible path towards the implementation of the two-state solution. It is imperative that this conference succeeds. I thank the co-chairs of the 8 roundtables for their work. These roundtables will address key topics and lay the foundation for the conference's success. The International Committee must reaffirm its unwavering commitment to a comprehensive, just and lasting peace based on international law, the United Nations Charter, relevant United Nations resolutions. But we must translate commitment into action. The outcome of the conference must therefore be concrete and action-oriented, identifying steps needed to realize the two-state solution. Your Excellencies, the horrors we have witnessed in Gaza for over 19 months should pair us to urgent action to end the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. The devastating cycles of death, destruction, and displacement cannot be allowed to continue. This conflict cannot be resolved through permanent war, nor through endless occupation or annexation. It will only end when Israelis and Palestinians can live side by side in their own sovereign, independent states in peace, security, and dignity. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it has been 70 years since the General Assembly first called for a two-state solution. Since then, the Assembly has reaffirmed its unwavering support for this vision through numerous resolutions. It is now our collective responsibility to act decisively and actually implement these resolutions. It is now our responsibility to uphold international law and honor the principles of the United Nations Charter. We must restore trust in the United Nations, the international community, and in our commitments to the peoples of Palestine and Israel. Let us act now to pave the way for a peaceful settlement of this conflict, one that honors the legitimate aspirations and rights of both Palestinians and Israelis, one that ensures a better future for everyone in the Middle East. Thank you.
I thank the President of the General Assembly. I now give the floor to my fellow co-chair, Ms. Legon, to deliver some opening remarks. Thank you.
Monsieur le Président, Mesdames et
President, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to thank the President of the General Assembly, Ms. Rosemarie DiCarlo, the representative of the SG, as well as Ms. Manal Radwan. Thank you for your briefings and for chairing this meeting. In keeping with the resolution adopted on the 3rd of December 2024 by the General Assembly, by a very large majority, France will be co-chairing together with Saudi Arabia the International Conference for the peaceful settlement of the question of Palestine and the implementation of the two-state solution, which will be held next month in New York. This conference comes at a crucial time, at a time when what's at stake is a just and lasting solution for Palestinians and Israelis on the basis of a two-state solution. This is something that's under threat today more than ever. I have 3 key points I'd like to make today. First, I'd like to send a message of mobilization. In the run-up to the June conference, the international community must remain mobilized to support efforts so as to put an end to the war in Gaza and release all hostages. As the President of France, Emmanuel Macron, has said on numerous occasions, the war in Gaza must end. All of the hostages detained following the terrorist attacks committed on the 7th of October 2023 must be released immediately, unconditionally, and with due respect for their dignity. The hell that the civilian population in Gaza is living through must end. Violations of the ceasefire and the resumption of Israeli strikes in the Gaza Strip are a very serious rollback with terrible consequences for the civilian population, hostages and their families, as well as for the region's security. We are hoping for negotiations to resume as swiftly as possible. We support the efforts of the mediators, American, Egyptian and Qatari. France has tirelessly worked for a lasting ceasefire, the only way to ensure the release of hostages retained to this day by Hamas and other terrorist groups. The odious theatrics which we saw when the previous releases took place should not be repeated. The recent release of Eden Alexander should mark the beginning of the end of this hellish experience for the others. Humanitarian assistance must enter Gaza immediately and at scale. This is an obligation under IHL. It's an issue of humanity. The situation is disastrous. And yet Israel has decided to authorize a minimum quality of food to enter the Gaza Strip. This is insufficient. Israel must end all of the blockades on humanitarian aid to Gaza. Since the start of March, Israeli bombing has resulted in over 3,500 deaths. Last week, 716 Palestinians were killed. Most were civilians, women and children. 437 humanitarian workers were killed since October 2023, including over 300 UN personnel. We condemn these attacks and reiterate the need for humanitarian workers to be afforded protection as per international law, much like civilians. On the 30th of April, France recalled the fact that Israel must provide full assistance to UNRWA and other humanitarian bodies working in the occupied Palestinian territories, the OPT. This means their activities should not be hindered. This brings me to my second message. Urgency. We must urgently place a political solution front of mind. Only the implementation of a political two-state solution will restore peace, prosperity, and security for Israelis, Palestinians, and for the region at large. This solution, which brings us together today, which we're all mobilized behind, is undermined by the aggravation of settlement activity in the West Bank, violence, settler violence committed by extremists, and the desire to weaken the Palestinian Authority by referring to annexation and forced displacement of the population. As President Macron, as well as the British and Canadian Prime Ministers, said, Israel must put an end to settlement activity. It's illegal and compromises the viability of a Palestinian state. Primary responsibility for settling the Israeli-Palestinian conflict falls on the parties, and yet the events of these last few weeks, the failures have shown that without a decisive commitment on the part of the international community to ensure that the parties are committed to a political solution that's mutually agreeable, unless we have that, the conflict will only get worse and peace will be further and further out of reach. My third message is the following. The June conference must mark a transformative milestone for the effective implementation of the two-state solution. We must move from words to deeds. We must move from the end of the war in Gaza to an end of the conflict. Faced with the facts on the ground, the prospects of a Palestinian state must be maintained. Irreversible steps and concrete measures for the implementation thereof are necessary. This is the thrust behind the June conference. We'll be working with everybody who wishes to be involved so as to craft a roadmap for peace and security based on a two-state solution, two states, Israel and Palestine, living side by side in peace and security within secure and recognized borders. The course we've charted is clear. That is the the mutual recognition and the effective implementation of the two-state solution. For France, this roadmap should guarantee Israel's security and its regional integration, as well as meet the legitimate aspirations of Palestinians to have their own state. We must create a robust and credible framework for the day after in Gaza. We must work to disarm and sideline Hamas, which should no longer be a threat to Israel, as well as to craft credible governance and reform the Palestinian Authority. The UN should take pride of place in this process. The work of the 8 working groups which have been established will seek to make concrete contributions to advance the implementation of the two-state solution in all of its dimensions, political, security, humanitarian, all of the dimensions of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, that is. I'd like to once again thank the co-chairs of all of the working groups for being mobilized, committed, and I'd also like to thank all members for partaking in these deliberations. The working groups are open-ended. All states can participate, as well as General Assembly observers and other UN system representatives. Our role as co-chairs of this conference, together with our Saudi colleagues, is to promote a preparatory process that's open, transparent, and inclusive so as to steer this work. For this reason, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and France have already held a series of consultations here in New York. We began on the 9th of April. Member states participated. We tried to get their input, hear about their expectations, and we will be continuing this process. What are our expectations for the June conference? Well, we want the working groups to feed into roundtables, which will allow these states to put the spotlight on the measures they are ready to take, whether that be individually or collectively, so as to achieve concrete results on the ground. Ladies and gentlemen, France stands determined to build, together with you, a Middle East that's stable, safer, more integrated, and that respects the rights of all people in the region without exception. We are determined to advance this objective for the benefit of Israelis and Palestinians, and we hope to make headway towards this goal as part of this work together with you. I thank you.
I will now deliver the opening remarks of Saudi Arabia. Your Excellencies, Mr. President of the General Assembly, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia expresses its deep appreciation for your leadership and your insightful opening remarks. I also welcome Her Excellency, Ms. Rosemary DiCarlo, Under Secretary General for Political and Peace-Building Affairs. I thank very much my co-chair, and I value very much in Saudi Arabia the partnership that we have with France. We are honored to co-chair the conference alongside the Republic of France and to stand with all those committed to ensuring that this diplomatic effort leads to real, irreversible, and transformative change, to ensure, once and for all, the peaceful settlement of the question of Palestine. This preparatory meeting must chart the course for action, not reflection. Ladies and gentlemen, we meet at a moment of historic urgency. Gaza is enduring unimaginable suffering. Civilians continue to pay the price of a war that must end immediately. The escalation in the West Bank is equally alarming. Despair grows deeper by the day, and yet this is precisely why we must speak not only of ending the war, but of ending a conflict that has lasted for nearly 8 decades. Ending the war, securing the release of hostages and detainees, and ensuring both immediate and long-term security for all are urgent imperatives. But they cannot be sustained through temporary arrangements alone. They must be anchored in a credible and irreversible political plan, one that addresses the root cause of the conflict and offers a real path to peace, dignity, and mutual security. Only through such a framework we can move beyond crisis management towards a durable and a just resolution. The occupation must end for peace and prosperity to prevail in the region. Peace is not abstract or distant. Peace is necessary. Peace is overdue. This conference must be the beginning of the end of the conflict. This is not about words, it is about action. It is about ensuring that our collective principles are translated into lasting realities. This is why the working groups established under this conference are not side discussions. They are the core drivers of implementation. Their mandate may overlap, but this is not a flaw. It is a deliberate strength. Peace and security are complex and demand a comprehensive, inclusive, and interlinked approach. The roundtables reflect the totality of the challenge and the breadth of the solution. From statehood to security, from reconstruction to legal accountability, from economic resilience to shaping narratives for peace, from preserving the two-state solution to peace day efforts, each working group is designed to deliver practical and time-bound outcomes. Moving forward requires that we recognize a set of fundamental truths that have often undermined previous peace efforts. Respect for international law, adherence to human rights, and the equal application of legal norms are not optional. They are essential. Justice cannot be selective. When the right to self-determination, protection, and dignity is recognized for some but denied to others, the result is repeated cycle of violence, radicalization, and insecurity. The result is repeated cycles of violence, radicalization, and insecurity. Peace cannot take root where hatred is cultivated. We must reject dehumanization, incitement, and hate speech, especially when it comes from those in positions of authority. A just solution to the Palestinian question is not only a moral and a legal imperative. It is the cornerstone of a new regional order based on mutual recognition and coexistence. Regional peace begins with recognizing the state of Palestine, not as a symbolic gesture, but as a strategic necessity. It is the only way to eliminate the space exploited by non-state actors and replace despair with a political horizon grounded in rights and sovereignty, ensuring security and dignity for all. A viable and a sovereign Palestinian state is not the end of peace. It is the beginning of peace. It is how we de-escalate, stabilize, and lay the foundations for integration and prosperity in the region. An empowered Palestinian government is essential to peace. In this regard, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia welcomes and salutes the important steps taken by the Palestinian leadership. We commend His Excellency President Mahmoud Abbas for initiating institutional reform, including the appointment of a vice president, an important measure to strengthen governance and continuity. We also recognize the efforts of His Excellency Prime Minister Mahmoud Mustafa and his government in advancing reforms aimed at transparency, accountability, and economic recovery. We urge you to help ensure the success of the Palestinian government. Its ability to function effectively is essential to the credibility and implementation of the two-state solution, and to the creation of conditions where peace and coexistence can take root. Esteemed delegates, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia's leadership in promoting peace has been consistent and sustained. It began over 2 decades ago with the launch of the Arab Peace Initiative, a bold, comprehensive framework for peace based on land for peace and mutual recognition. 20 years later, this commitment was renewed and strengthened through the launch of the Peace Day effort in partnership with the Arab League, the European Union, and in cooperation with the Arab Republic of Egypt and the Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan. The Kingdom is also proud to have launched, as chair of the Arab OIC Ministerial Contact on Gaza, together with the Kingdom of Norway and the European Union, the Global Alliance for the Implementation of the Two-State Solution, an alliance that was launched here in New York, an alliance for peace, justice, and rights. It was created to mobilize the international community in support of the two-state solution through coordinated political, financial, and security measures. As we move toward the conclusion of this conference, Saudi Arabia sees the Global Alliance as a natural and an effective mechanism to carry forward its outcomes. It should serve not only as a platform to arrive at consensus, but as the operational framework for implementation, helping to translate the commitments made here into measurable progress on the ground. The outcome document that is expected of this conference should and will reflect the collective work of the roundtables under the leadership of the co-chairs. It must be more than a declaration. It must be a blueprint for action. In that spirit, we call on all participants to contribute actively to these working groups, not only with principled positions, but with practical ideas and concrete commitments. The Global Alliance will be instrumental in sustaining this momentum, coordinating follow-up, and holding ourselves accountable to the promises we make. And there are many promises that were made here in the UN. The ongoing crisis, continued occupation, and increasing levels of brutality and suffering have made one truth unmistakably clear. The only way to prevent the recurrence of violence, terrorism, and atrocities is to implement the two-state solution, including through the support of a robust multilateral framework. Guided by relevant UN resolutions, international law, the Madrid Terms of Reference, and the Arab Peace Initiative, this implementation must adhere to 5 key principles that should guide the work of all roundtables and working groups convened under the conference. First, it must be quick, time-bound, and irreversible, ensuring that each phase builds real and lasting momentum. Second, it must be substantial, recognizing Palestinian statehood as a precondition for peace, not its product. Third, it must be flexible and inclusive. Fourth, it must be autonomous, shielded from spoilers, and protected by a broad, committed coalition. Fifth, it must be rooted in the rights and aspiration of both people to live in peace and security in a just and prosperous region. These principles must inform and drive the deliberations of every working group. They represent the consensus of past efforts and the blueprint for future action. Our task now is to operationalize these principles into mechanisms, milestones, and commitments that move us decisively towards the two-state solution. This preparatory conference plays a pivotal role in laying the foundation for the success of the upcoming high-level international conference. It offers an essential space for aligning international positions, sharpening the focus of the working groups, and securing early commitments that can accelerate momentum. The preparatory process is also an important opportunity to reaffirm that our collective engagement is not symbolic, but strategic and enduring. The Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, in its capacity as co-chair, reaffirms that this conference is not an end in itself, but the beginning of a sustained diplomatic and implementation effort. We urge all participants to contribute proactively, bringing political will, concrete proposals, and readiness to shoulder long-term responsibilities. Only through such shared commitment can we build the path towards the two-state solution and the end of this protracted conflict. We must think from ending the war to ending the conflict. Let us be clear. War will never bring peace. Only an irreversible, time-bound action plan rooted in international law and aimed at implementing the two-state solution can achieve that. Let this be the moment we move forward decisively, together, and with purpose. Thank you very much.
Merci, Madame la coprésidente, pour ces...
Thank you, Madam Co-Chair, for these remarks. We will now open the floor to the co-chairs of the 8 working groups so that they can update participants on the results of their consultations and the process that they followed. Following the statements by the chairs of the first 4 working groups, the co-chairs will invite all participants who wish to do so to take the floor to make their statements. And we would then invite delegations to submit comments in writing to the contact points in the 2 missions of Saudi Arabia and France. So without further ado, we will now open the floor for our discussion by the co-chairs of the working groups. We'll begin with Jordan and Spain, co-chairs of the working group entitled A Sovereign and United Palestinian State Living Side by Side in Peace and Security with Israel. I give the floor to Jordan. Thank you.
Thank you. Excellencies, I would like to thank the missions of France and the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia for convening this preparatory meeting for the high-level international conference on the question of Palestine and the implementation of the two-state solution. We support the efforts of both co-chairs for the success in the organization of the conference. We have long called for an international conference, and we are engaged in making a success out of it. Spain is honored to co-chair, together with Jordan, Working Group Number 1, a sovereign and unified Palestinian state living side by side in peace and security with Israel. The objective of the group reflects a vision endorsed by the mass majority of the international community, based on international law and UN resolutions. However, the current situation on the ground is moving in the opposite direction. It is therefore more necessary than ever to strive for the realization of a Palestinian state living in peace and security with Israel as an indispensable element for mutual security, regional stability, and peace. The June conference is crucial for the international community to advance towards the peaceful settlement of the Palestinian question, moving from words to deeds, as it has already been said, and breaking the series of crises and wars for once all in the region. In this context, the aim of this group will not focus on a theoretical discussion or debate, but on the search for concrete actions to move forward for the actual implementation of the two-state solution, which requires materialization of the Palestinian state. To this end, we propose a series of guiding questions that can help member states and stakeholders identify practical steps towards a unified Palestinian state living side by side in peace and security with Israel. Before entering into the guiding questions, allow me to briefly outline how Jordan and Spain propose to organize the work from here to June. First of all, we both would like to thank you for the contributions already received, and we invite all of you to keep sending us written contributions by 30 May. The contributions will be the basis for informal consultations on 2nd of June. And from now to June, we will engage in a reach-out calendar to UN membership to encourage contributions and foster dialogue with all of you. As an additional action, we are exploring options for engaging with civil societies, and all these elements will be shared with all of you in the coming days in a working calendar. Going back to the guiding questions, the first question invites member states to identify which new institutional, legal, or diplomatic mechanism could be implemented, or which existing mechanism could be strengthened and actually put in force to give a real impetus to the realization of the two-state solution within the framework of the relevant UN resolutions and ICJ advisory opinions, as a reminder that this process must be guided by the principles of justice and international legality. The second question refers to the concrete steps that UN member states can take to support the realization of the Palestinian people's right to self-determination, including the right to an independent and viable state of Palestine. To this end, it addresses three interconnected dimensions of Palestinian state building: recognition, territorial contiguity, and sovereignty and governance, which member states and stakeholders can use as a basis from which they can elaborate their proposals. These are not merely abstract or theoretical ideas, but they relate to central elements to the two-state solution, with a sovereign and unified Palestinian state living side by side in peace and security with Israel. Another question posed by the working group concerned how states, together with international financial institutions, could provide political support and financial resources to reconnect the West Bank and Gaza. The context from which it is formulated is not economic, but political, to contribute with concrete actions to overcome the current fragmentation and build a viable Palestinian state. Thank you for your attention. I pass now the floor to my esteemed Jordanian colleague, Ambassador Mahmoud Taifal Ahmoud, who will address the remaining guiding questions. Thank you.
Madam Co-Chairs, thank you again for the tremendous efforts that Saudi Arabia and France are playing in convening this very important conference at a very important juncture and milestone for the international community in dealing with the question of Palestine. The questions that we have proposed are self-explanatory, but I will recite them again and maybe with further elaboration. The remaining questions, the third part of the second question is related to the sovereignty of and governance. How can the international community as a whole and member states guarantee that the Palestinian Authority exercises sovereign authority over OPT, including occupied East Jerusalem? Obviously, this is a matter of reiterating the sovereignty. What can we do? What specific measures can we do to reiterate the sovereignty and the ability of the Palestinian government to exercise sovereignty over the occupied Palestinian territory? And that specifically you can talk about practical measures related to capacity building and the strengthening the governance capacity, institutional building that the Palestinian government can have on OPT. What can you do to strengthen their capacity? And what measures must be taken? This is a second aspect related to East Jerusalem. To prevent any action that might alter the demographic composition, character, and status of occupied East Jerusalem, or change the historic status quo of the holy sites in the city. This question, obviously, if you look at what the court, the ICJ has said in its response in the advisory opinion last year on occupation, this aspect has been addressed, and it gives guidance to states, so you might want to consult what the court has said in this regard. And for the issue of the historic status quo is something very important. The historic status quo has existed since the 19th century, the second part of the 19th century, with regard to the holy sites in East Jerusalem, primarily the Christian and Muslim holy sites. And obviously, in the past 20 to 30 years, there have been attempts to change this historic status quo, which obviously is one of the crucial aspects that are cause of conflict in the Middle East, not only Arab-Israeli conflict or the Palestinian-Israeli conflict, but it's related to the different followers of different nominations in the world. The third question is what specific measures or commitments can member states take, including through the regional organizations, to ensure the differentiation between Israel and the OPT in their dealings, so that any treaty or agreement involving OPT is concluded with the state of Palestine. And this is very important. And this is a multidimensional question. Whatever legal dealing you have, whether it's a treaty, whether it's an agreement, whether even a political memorandum of understanding, it is very important that it is concluded with the Palestinian government. And to distinguish your dealings with Israel from the occupied Palestinian territory, including East Jerusalem. The fourth question, and these are all specific measures that have practical effects on the two-state solution. What specific measures can member states take, including through the regional organizations, to guarantee that entities under their jurisdiction do not carry out any activities in OPT or perform transactions related to without the consent of the Palestinian government. And essentially, if you have a corporation under your jurisdiction, what measures can you take in order to prevent that corporation from taking any transaction related to the OPT without the approval of the Palestinian government? And that's not only related to commercial entities, but also other entities, NGOs, that any operation they have is with the consent of the government of Palestine. And lastly, Madam Co-Chairs, what steps can member states take to induce Israel and Palestine to reach a peaceful resolution of the conflict in accordance with the relevant UN resolutions and international law? And this is more on the political level. What can we do in order to have the two parties reach a peaceful settlement? What ideas do you have in this regard? And it is both related to countering unilateral measures that can be taken by either side to create new realities, and also to induce a negotiated peaceful settlement, yet based on international law and the parameters of the two-state solution, as has been agreed by all the references from the Madrid process, from the Arab Peace Initiative, and other references. Thank you, Madam Co-Chairs.
I thank the distinguished representatives of Spain and Jordan. I invite the distinguished representatives of Italy and Indonesia, co-chairs of Working Group 2, entitled Security for Israelis and Palestinians, to present the outcome of their work.
Madam Co-Chairs, distinguished colleagues, let me begin by thanking France and the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia for convening us here today. The high-level conference represents a timely opportunity to mobilize all efforts to end hostilities and advance the implementation of the two-state solution through a genuine peace process. Support by the international community has from the start been key to the success of this endeavor. In this case, the phase that the conference is rooted in UN resolutions calls us even more to deliver on our commitment through positive actions. Italy is therefore honored to chair with Indonesia the Working Group on Security for Israelis and Palestinians, a linchpin for the two-state solution and a key domain in which both our countries have long-standing experience, notably through their participation in UN peacekeeping missions. Initial consultations between us have been extremely useful and productive. We agreed on the importance that ours and other states' inputs should clearly focus on the security dimension in full respect of the sovereignty of all states and promote synergies with the work of other groups, which are indeed indispensable, while avoiding duplications. It is essential to conceive practical, feasible, and concrete policies that support the path towards the two-state solution by anchoring it to the reality on the ground today in accordance with international law. This objective may seem far on the horizon, but even through piecemeal steps, action is required now. To this end, Indonesia and Italy are working on a set of proposals for the short, medium, and long term. The approach of this working group is centered on two main pillars that are interrelated: ensuring security for all peoples and respecting international law. We believe that recommendations that we are going to propose can be as inclusive and balanced as possible in order to ensure the sustainability of the measures we propose and the overall stability of the region. We urge all states interested in the activity of this working group to consider these criteria in their recommendations. The working group will also be able to draw on important lessons from the past. Chief among them are the models and experiences of UN-mandated missions enriched with the specificities of the context and of the occupied Palestinian territory, to define the scope and tasks of an international force that would temporarily provide protection and security, and support the Palestinian Authority in its role and responsibilities across the OPT. In addition to that, our proposals will seek to shape a security environment that addresses simultaneously the security needs of Israelis and Palestinians alike, as well as the Palestinians' legitimate aspirations for an independent and sovereign state, in accordance with relevant UN resolutions. We believe that peace and security go hand in hand, the former being critical to achieving the latter, and the latter being essential to sustain the former. We strongly hope it will be a cross-cutting theme, not only of this working group, but of the overall conference. On these assumptions, we are ready to engage in discussion as early as this afternoon with all interested states whose contributions are most welcome and indeed encouraged. I thank you and give the floor to my colleague from Indonesia.
Madam Co-Chair, let me first express Indonesia's appreciations to France and Saudi Arabia as co-chairs of the conference for convening us today. Please be assured of Indonesia's full support in ensuring a meaningful and successful outcome. I thank my fellow co-chair of Italy for the introduction, and as the representative of Italy has outlined the overarching strategic objectives of this roundtable, allow me to highlight our direction and next steps. Let me highlight once more that our discussion will focus on the security of both peoples in the context of implementation of the two-state solution. UN Security Council 2334 has been very clear on the parameters required in this regard and will be the basis of our work. To that end, we encourage all participating states to provide concrete and action-oriented inputs to this roundtable. We propose the following timeline and process. We will extend the deadline for written contribution from 23rd of May to a later date. Thereafter, the co-chairs will circulate a draft recommendation which contains member states' inputs and provides a basis for structured discussion. A consultation meeting with member states will then be convened to review the key findings and initial recommendations. We will provide further information in due course. Consecutively, the co-chairs also intends to conduct a consultation with relevant UN agencies, international organizations, and civil society stakeholders to ensure a broader, inclusive perspective. Following this, we will await further written input, which will form the foundation of the co-chair's final report, which aims to reflect common ground and chart a way forward. While recommitting ourselves to leveraging political commitment and strategic objectives as enshrined on various UN resolutions, let us ensure that this roundtable produces tangible commitments that bring us closer to a just, lasting, and comprehensive peace. I thank you, Madam Co-Chairs.
Je remercie les représentants de l'Indonésie.
I thank the representatives of Indonesia and Italy for their briefings. I invite the co-chairs of Working Group 3, dedicated to peace narratives, to come and tell us about the outcome of their work. The representative of Qatar, Canada, and Mexico, please come up to the podium to brief us. Thank you.
Excellencies, dear colleagues, Canada, Mexico, and the State of Qatar expresses our sincere appreciation to France and the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia for their initiative to convene the high-level international conference for the peaceful settlement of the question of Palestine and the implementation of the two-state solution. We are very pleased to undertake the task of co-chairing Working Group number 3 on narratives for peace. The Working Group on Narratives for Peace aim at identifying substantive, action-oriented, and practical contributions to advance a time-bound agenda for the implementation of the United Nations resolutions pertaining to the peaceful settlement of the question of Palestine and the two-state solution. Diplomatic efforts to achieve a just and lasting settlement for the Palestinian question must be accompanied by a constructive narrative for peace, one that cultivates mutual understanding, builds public support, and creates the conditions necessary for political agreements to take hold and succeed. By fostering a narrative that emphasizes trust, mutual respect, and a shared commitment to peace, international efforts can create a more conducive environment for the successful implementation of peace plans and the two-state solution. A narrative for peace seeks to build and sustain a positive, realistic, and inclusive dialogue that would mobilize political will and shift focus from entrenched grievances and zero-sum perspectives to a vision of mutual understanding, coexistence, and shared prosperity. This helps foster an environment conducive to reconciliation and mutual understanding between Israelis and Palestinians. In this, I will explain about, of course, the process we will undertake and the intended work plan during the period leading to the convening of the main conference. In terms of the process, a concept note was circulated yesterday, which includes a background and also guiding questions for discussions, and they are: how can a constructive narrative of peace and coexistence and mutual recognition of human rights and security support the two-state solution? What specific strategies or initiatives can be implemented to promote human rights, security, and aspirations of both peoples for the benefit of future generations and reinforce international law and agreements as the foundation for peace? How can different segments of both societies, including civil society, youth, women groups, be engaged in meaningful dialogue and peace-building initiatives to ensure they emerge as advocates for coexistence rather than division? Can focusing on as well shared interests such as economic development and regional stability play a role in advancing the two-state solution? What successful models or frameworks from other contexts have effectively addressed hate speech and incitement? How can these frameworks be adopted to advance the two-state solution? And finally, what specific recommendations can encourage media organizations to adopt a proactive approach in promoting narratives that support peace, challenge existing prejudices, reducing the spread of dehumanization rhetoric, while countering the spread of misinformation and disinformation? What role can social media play as well in facilitating this process? On the intended work plan for the co-chairs of this working group, the 3 co-chairs of the working group will look forward to receiving the views of member states and stakeholders on the theme of the working group and the responses to the guiding questions by May 30th. We urge you to be concise and to share them via email as indicated in the concept note. The co-chairs also will then consolidate inputs received and release a draft compilation to member states by June 2nd. The co-chairs will convene a meeting for interested delegations to discuss this draft compilation on June 4th at a venue that will be announced soon. The co-chairs as well will aim to submit a final version of this paper to the co-chairs of the high-level international conference, France and Saudi Arabia, on June 80th. We will aim for it, of course. We look forward to receiving a template, the template for submission from the co-chairs of the General Conference. This will form the basis for discussion in Roundtable 3 and its contributions to the outcome of the high-level international conference. We look forward to continuing engaging with the delegations on this important effort. And in this, I give the floor now to Mr. Martin Laros, Director General of the Middle East Bureau at Global Affairs Canada, and I thank you.
For the translator, I'll speak first in French and then we'll switch to English. Excellence.
Excellencies, distinguished colleagues. At the outset, I'd like to thank the delegations of France and the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia for their leadership. The leadership they exhibited in convening this very important conference. Canada is honored to have been selected together with Qatar and Mexico to co-chair this working group, Narratives for Peace. We thank our colleagues for their cooperation as we work on this project. It is pressing that we have a credible and irreversible path towards the two-state solution, giving hope to Israelis and Palestinians so that they can live side by side in peace, security, and dignity.
Creating an environment of peaceful coexistence is fundamental to achieving the broader aims of a just and lasting peace in the form of a two-state solution. To this end, and as Ambassador Haltani has eloquently stated, a narrative for peace will seek to build and sustain a positive and inclusive dialogue to shift focus towards a vision of mutual understanding, coexistence, and shared prosperity. Canada looks forward to working with Qatar and Mexico and to receiving the inputs from all participants in order to advance this essential and important work. Merci beaucoup.
Señoras,
Co-chairs, distinguished colleagues, I take the floor very briefly to express my country's commitment to the objectives of this conference. At the same time, I wish to tell you that Mexico is pleased to be one of the co-chairs of Working Group 3 on Narratives for Peace, together with the distinguished ambassadors of Qatar and Canada. Given that Mexico's participation at this conference was defined just a few hours ago, I can not yet present the proposed contribution of my country to the work of this working group. Our contribution will be distributed to you towards the end of today. I conclude with thanks for the trust shown in Mexico as a integral part of the international conference on the two-state solution. Thank you very much.
I thank the distinguished representatives of Qatar, Canada, and Mexico. I now invite the distinguished representatives of Norway and Japan, co-chairs of Working Group 4, entitled Economic Viability of the Palestinian State, to present the outcome of their work.
Japan and Norway are pleased to present Working Group number 4, Economic Viability of the Palestinian State. To materialize the independent Palestinian state, to implement the two-state solution, and to ensure that Israelis and Palestinians can live side by side in peace and security, we must strengthen the economic sustainability of the Palestinian state and its institutions. Ensuring that existing achievements in the state building are not lost is already a good investment. The Palestinian governmental institutions built with our support need revenues to continue to function. Norway and Japan have invited the UN member states and observers to provide written input, including provisional comments. The response we have received so far is promising and a strong testament of the international community's conviction that a stronger support to Palestinian government is needed. We encourage all states here today and within the next week to submit in writing the proposals for concrete measures and answers to our guiding questions. We have extended the deadline until the 30th of May. We have also started consulting some UN organizations and thank those who have already contributed to the process by submitting their comments. We aim to invite for an informal meeting for consultations within the first week of June. In the informal meeting, we intend to present a compilation of written submissions from member states and discuss how we can further strengthen our collective efforts. We will also rely heavily on the technical expertise of international organizations such as the World Bank, the IMF, and the UN moving forward. The International Donor Group, HLC, also chaired by Norway, will continue to be an important platform to ensure Palestinian ownership, to engage with the Palestinian government on their reform, and to address economic issues with Israel, such as transfer of revenue, banking relations, work permits, initiatives to improve trade, access to resources, and infrastructure development. We want to create synergies by building upon the existing work in the HLC and in the Global Alliance for the Implementation of the Two-State Solutions and all other relevant organizations. These mechanisms could also be used for the follow-up. I will now give the floor to my esteemed Japanese colleague.
Thank you, and thank you, Madam Co-Chairs. We thank France and the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia for their initiative. We also thank a number of delegations and UN agencies who submitted responses to our guiding questions. Thanks, Torun, for summarizing our working group's objective and the way forward. Japan is truly honored to be co-chairing Working Group 4 alongside Norway. As Torun has just highlighted, economic viability is crucial to the reality of a Palestinian state. The more self-sustaining the Palestinian economy becomes, the more the imbalance in Israeli-Palestinian economic relations will be corrected. Japan has supported Palestine's economic self-reliance through numbers of projects hand in hand with the PA and regional stakeholders, including Israel. It is our conviction that fostering Palestinian economic development, both public and private, will serve mutual trust and interdependence between Israel and Palestine, and ultimately will ensure Israel's security. There is no doubt that the active involvement of Israel remains a key for achieving economic sustainability of Palestine. Therefore, we welcome meaningful contributions to the economic viability of Palestine from participating countries and relevant organizations. Thank you very much.
Je remercie les
I thank the representatives of Norway and Japan for their comments, and I invite Working Group number 8, the representative of the League of Arab States and the European Union, to present the outcome of their work.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I take this opportunity to express our deep appreciation for the co-chairs for the effort that they have exerted in order to get us to the point where we are, and I wish them good luck in the days to come. I would like to express also our deep appreciation for co-chairing this group with the EU. We consider the European Union a true partner and a like-minded friend. In this context, I wish to highly note recent steps that were taken by the EU, positive steps, practical steps that try to stop the carnage in Gaza and put meaningful pressure on the occupying power to end this mad war. any steps on the issues of weapons and settler violence will immensely serve our two common goals of stopping the genocidal war on Gaza and preserving the two-state solution. For those of you who do not know, perhaps we at the Arab League started the collaboration with the European Union on the idea of the Peace Day effort, outlining incentives and so-called peace package that could be materialized once the Palestinians and Israelis reach a final peace agreement. And we initiated this effort together with Saudi Arabia a couple of years back. We intend to draw on the work, discussions, and reflections that developed throughout the meetings and brainstorming sessions that emerged from the Peace Day effort and later the Global Alliance. Throughout this process, both the Arab League and the EU grew more cognizant of points of strength in the Peace Day effort initiative, as well as potential pitfalls and shortcomings. On the one hand, the Peace Day effort sounds very promising. It presupposes that peace has already been achieved, and all what we need to do is figure out the dividends that will be enjoyed by both Palestinians and Israelis, along with all regional players. On the other hand, it risks being viewed as a mere mental exercise, a leap into the unknown, or just wishful thinking. How is it possible to discuss peace dividends along one of the worst episodes of violence where mutual hatred reached unprecedented levels? Some would certainly think this way. We think it is important and even necessary, especially at this very moment of total despair and utter darkness, to discuss peace dividends and envisage the benefits for all parties that would ensue should peace be achieved. Peace is difficult to conceive of as an abstract concept. It has to be detailed, fleshed out, explained in a language that people can understand in feasible and practical terms. If our present is so painful and full of suffering, we will not be able to surpass it unless we imagine a different future. That is what our exercise in this working group is all about. In one sense, it is an elaboration of the Arab Peace Initiative, declared back in 2002, promising full normalization with Israel in return, and I repeat, in return for full Israeli withdrawal from the occupied Arab territories. Having this in mind, we encourage you to engage with us with your ideas, suggestions, and contributions. What could your country, your organization present at the Day of Peace? We encourage you also to envisage for a moment a different future for this region where the Israeli occupation has ended and an independent, viable Palestinian state sees the light of day. What kind of security architecture could be formulated in the region? How can thorny issues of regional security be addressed? It is our conviction that the endless continuation of the conflict constitutes the main barrier preventing the emergence of a common security concept in the region, thus forestalling any effort at setting up a new security structure in the Middle East. The continuation of this conflict erodes trust that is absolutely necessary to attain common security. We are cognizant of the fact that security structures have emerged in other regions, some of which were very successful and long-standing. Some ensued bitter conflict and deep hatred between peoples.
We encourage your countries to share their experiences and expertise in this regard. We seek your suggestions and on how you see a future security arrangement in the region of the Middle East should peace prevail, and your ideas about the issues that should be addressed in order for this new system to emerge. To sum up, we invite you to be a little imaginative while not totally be disconnected from the harsh reality on the ground. We urge you to suggest what your country or organization can do should peace be imminent, and what you can offer or contribute either to the two rival parties or to regional peace and security in general. I would like to thank you, co-chairs, and I will cede the floor to my colleague, the representative of the European Union. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, dear Hossam, dear co-chairs, excellencies. Let me start by warmly thanking France and Kingdom of Saudi Arabia for their leadership in convening and organizing this impressive conference. Already we can feel that this effort is making a difference, raising awareness and political engagement at the highest level towards a two-state solution. I have the honor in my capacity as EU Special Representative for the Middle East Peace Process to co-chair with my colleague Hossam the Peace Day Effort Working Group. As most of you in New York and Capital remember, the Peace Day effort was a joint initiative by EU, Saudi Arabia, the League of Arab States, in cooperation with Egypt and Jordan, launched in September 2023 in the margin of UN General Assembly. The idea was to produce detailed programs and contributions that would support the peace and ensure that all peoples of the region reap its benefits. The logic is that despite the absence of real negotiations and the refusal by actors to engage in sustainable peace talks, it is our collective responsibility as UN member states, countries and organizations deeply affected by the conflict and committed to peace in the region to do our utmost to plan and prepare the outcome of any peace and to engage with the Palestinians and Israelis. This is also the rationale behind the Global Alliance for the Implementation of the Two-State Solution, launched last year at UNGA High-Level Week. I've had the pleasure of attending its last meeting this week in Rabat, co-chaired by Morocco and Netherlands, of which discussions proved very useful to prepare today's meeting and the June conference. Preparing for the eventuality of peace does not mean that we forget the vital emergency on the ground and the horror in the Gaza Strip. More than 50,000 Palestinians have been killed since October 2023. This war must end now, as the EU has repeated in their clearest terms. Yet, we also need to be ready to deliver concrete measures in all sectors to prepare for the day of peace. The needs are huge, and we know that one country or organization will not be able to deliver on them on its own. Only a collective effort will be able to match the huge needs in terms of early recovery, health, security, political engagement, accountability. This is what the Peace Day efforts entails, producing a peace-supporting package with concrete inputs from all interested stakeholders, able to incentivize direct peace negotiations between Israelis and Palestinians. It builds on the Arab Peace Initiative of 2002, on pertinent UN resolutions and internationally agreed parameters. The EU will play its part. It has committed as early as 2013 to providing an unprecedented package of support already, and the EU is a major donor to the Palestinian Authority and just agreed on 1.6 billion euros of support for the next 3 years after raising more than 400 million euros last year. It is also a major trade and political partner to Israel and to many countries in the region, and could do more on the Day of Peace to play a part in enhancing trade partnerships in the region. In recent days, the EU foreign ministers of the European Union have decided to review Israel's compliance with Article 2 of the Association Agreement with Israel. This decision sends a strong signal. The situation in Gaza is untenable. We also stand ready to adopt further sanctions, both against violent settlers and Hamas terrorists. This working group also aims to tackle the issue of regional security architecture. We will be engaging with key partners to envisage, while fully respecting sovereignty and international law, the best security guarantees for the region. In conclusion, with our Arab League friends, we have agreed on the way forward leading to the June conference. We circulated a concept note with guiding questions to the member states, both on contributions to a peace supporting package and on a potential regional security architecture. We have decided to organize consultations on June 4th, open to all UN missions, to further discuss and gather operational and substantive measures to feed into the outcomes of the conference. Let me stress that only concrete, detailed action plans will allow us to go forward in this exercise. And the EU and the Arab League will gladly report back on progress on June 17. Let me also stress the need of a proper follow-up mechanism for this conference's deliverables and outcome. We totally agree with Dr. Radwan on the role of the Global Alliance for the implementation of the two-state solution, notably Saudi Arabia and Norway, as well as with France, we lead. The Global Alliance is the perfect tool as an existing mechanism already joined by 100 states and international organizations to follow up on all the conference's deliverables. It shares the same objectives and the same structure. Co-chairs of the working groups could continue to be champions of these teams and responsible for the follow-up under the Global Alliance umbrella. It is our wish that the conference clearly mandates the Global Alliance for this important task as to ensure progress on all strands of work. Thank you very much for your attention.
Je remercie les représentants.
I thank the representative of the European Union and the League of Arab States for presenting the work of Working Group 8. That will be our last presentation from the working groups for this morning, and we'll resume those this afternoon. So I'll now open the floor to those delegations wishing to take the floor. But before giving them the floor, we would like to say that there is no pre-established list of speakers, so we ask them please to press on the microphone button to request for the floor. And in order to hear from the largest possible number of participants in this conference, we would invite you to limit your interventions to 5 minutes for delegations taking the floor on behalf of a group of states, and 3 minutes for those delegations speaking in a national capacity. I thank you all for your cooperation. Without further ado, I would now like to give the floor to the permanent observer of the State of Palestine that's requested the floor. Thank you.
شكرا السيدة الرئيسة.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The first stop in this conference should be Gaza and the end of genocide and aggression, lifting the blockade, thwarting the plan of displacement and annexation to reach Jerusalem as a capital of an independent sovereign state of Palestine. This path started when the ICJ issued its historic advisory opinion, which called for the end of the unlawful presence of the Israeli occupation in the entire territories of Palestine without any delay. The conference is based on the thinking and action of the global coalition to implement the two-state solution. The key word here is implementation, implementing the international legitimate resolutions and mobilize all efforts and capabilities to promote the Palestinian right, establish the state of Palestine, achieve its independence, and implement the two-state solution.
To thank the co-chairs of the roundtables and to express our readiness to fully cooperate with all of them. We are meeting while the threat of extermination and forcible displacement looms over our people in Gaza, who continue to be bombed and starved, while the mounting international response has yet to reach a level that would deter the continuation of these crimes. We believe the convening of the conference should signal a fundamental change of approach and a historic turning point, showing that the world as a whole will mobilize to save the Palestinian people, support the Palestinian state, salvage the two-state solution, end the Israeli occupation, and secure peace. As per its mandate, this conference is about implementation, about deeds, not words. It is the concrete commitments and actions undertaken by the states represented here that will determine the success of the conference and its ability to change reality. We call on every state represented here to really explore what actions they can take to restore faith in humanity in Gaza, to rebuild it without displacing its people, to support independence of the state of Palestine, to stop settlements and annexation and forcible displacement, to ensure protection for Palestinians end the occupation and achieve security for Palestinians and Israelis alike in full respect of their sovereignty, to support the Palestinian government who remains committed to liberation through peaceful means and reforms, to unify the West Bank and Gaza under Palestinian government, to uphold international law, ensure accountability, to prevent recurrence of crimes, to preserve and implement the two-state solution, the only viable path to shared peace and security. For the states which did not recognize Palestine, now is the time, before it is too late. For those who can provide budgetary support for the Palestinian government, we need your support. To those who can help to achieve ceasefire, address the humanitarian situation, including through UNRWA, and the construction of Gaza, there is no mission more noble. To those who can build infrastructure, support projects, make investments, let's build a different future. To those who can take measures, sanctions, and decisions to prevent any trade or relations with settlements, to stop the flow of arms that contribute to destroying the Palestinian people and the Palestinian state, to ensure respect for international law. Don't defer your decisions. We hope we will be able to see national and collective decisions to end the genocide, end the occupation, and achieve peace, to launch projects, to sign agreements, to take initiatives with transformative power. We are summoned by history and by agony of millions of people to act, not to wait, not resign, not surrender. And we count on all of you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
I thank the distinguished representative of the State of Palestine. And now I give the floor to the distinguished representative of the United Arab Emirates.
السيد الرئيس يشرف.
Madam Chair, I have the honor to deliver this statement on behalf of the Arab group. And I would like to convey my deep appreciation to the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and the Republic of France for their wise leadership of this important initiative. I would also like to extend our sincere thanks to the co-chairs of the working groups for their dedicated efforts in drafting the conference's outcome document. The Arab Group reiterates its full support for the conference's primary objective, that is, translating the United Nations resolutions on Palestine into concrete and time-bound measures. This conference must serve as a historic turning point in the pursuit of establishing an independent state of Palestine with Jerusalem as its capital, and it must also advance the urgent and effective implementation of the two-state solution through a process that is prompt, clearly defined, and irreversible, as underscored in the concept note of the conference. In this context, we commend the conference's pragmatic approach to form 8 thematic working groups addressing the core strands of work necessary for achieving the just and comprehensive settlement. The Arab Group believes that this holistic approach is vital to breaking the cycle of conflict and laying the foundation for a genuine and lasting peace. Madam Chair, the Arab Group strongly endorses the inclusion of explicit commitments from member states in the outcome document, particularly regarding the following key areas. First, urging all states that have not done so to recognize the State of Palestine. Second, actively supporting Palestine's full membership in the United Nations. Third, implementing firm measures to halt aggression, settlement expansion, and the blockade while ensuring full respect for international law. Fourth, bolstering support for the Palestinian people, the rights, and the Palestinian state and its institutions. Fifth, opposing any displacement plans and advancing the joint Arab-Islamic recovery and reconstruction plan of Gaza. Six, ensuring the provision of international protection for the Palestinian people. We also call for the inclusion of robust follow-up mechanisms in the outcome document, featuring clear benchmarks and defined timelines. In this regard, we commend the efforts of the co-chairs in promoting high-level participation and securing meaningful substantive commitments. In conclusion, the Arab Group reiterates its unwavering commitment to achieving a just and comprehensive peace based on the two-state solution and in accordance with international law, relevant United Nations resolutions, and the Arab Peace Initiative. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Des Émirats Arabes Unis.
I thank the representative of the UAE and I invite the representative of China to take the floor.
Co-chairs, I thank France and Saudi Arabia for convening today's preparatory meeting. I've listened carefully to the briefings by the co-chairs of the working groups. Let me make the following points. First, firm and dedicated political support is the key guarantee for advancing the Middle East peace process. The two-state solution is the only viable path to resolving the question of Palestine. We support convening the high-level conference to rally stronger and broader international support for Palestine, so as to take irreversible action to implement the two-state solution. Any unilateral action that undermines the two-state solution should be rejected and resisted. As stated in the conference's concept note, building an independent Palestinian state is the precondition for realizing peace, and the recognition and granting of full membership to Palestine in the UN is the prerequisite for advancing a political settlement. China reiterates its support for the establishment of a fully sovereign and independent state of Palestine on the basis of the 1967 borders with East Jerusalem as its capital. We look forward to welcoming Palestine as a full member of the UN as early as possible. We count on the working groups, including those on a sovereign and unified Palestinian state living side by side in peace and security with Israel, on preserving the two-state solution, and on promoting respect for international law in order to implement the two-state solution, to take vigorous action to this end. Second, development assistance is an important buttress for independent statehood. Developing the economy and improving people's livelihoods is the crucial foundation for building an independent Palestinian state. The international community should increase its humanitarian and development assistance to Palestine and support its efforts to enhance governance capacity and achieve sustainable and independent economic growth. UNRWA is the backbone of humanitarian assistance in Gaza and is an important provider of public services in the West Bank, and therefore its normal functioning must be guaranteed. China supports the Gaza Recovery and Reconstruction Plan initiated by the Arab countries. We agree with the goals and requirements raised by the working groups on the economic viability of the State of Palestine and on humanitarian action and reconstruction. We will actively participate in relevant reconstruction work and continue to help Palestine to the best of our abilities. Third, realizing a ceasefire and saving lives remains an urgent priority. As I emphasized at the April informal consultations, ending the conflict is the prerequisite for discussing all long-term arrangements and lasting peace. If a ceasefire in Gaza is delayed indefinitely, discussions on a two-state solution will be empty talk. At present, the situation is getting increasingly precarious as Israel is escalating its ground attacks in Gaza and occupying more territory. Settlements in the West Bank are also expanding, while settler violence is intensifying. And there was the recent bad incident of Israeli military firing warning shots at the invited diplomatic delegations visiting Jenin. The international community must summon the greatest urgency to promote a ceasefire in Gaza, alleviate the humanitarian catastrophe, and give the people of Gaza hopes for survival. The Security Council, as the primary organ tasked with the maintenance of international peace and security, has the responsibility to take all necessary actions to achieve a lasting ceasefire in Gaza. The working groups on security for Israelis and Palestinians and on narrative for peace also have a role to play in this regard. Co-chairs, we appreciate the efforts made by France, Saudi Arabia, and the co-chairs of all working groups to prepare for the conference, and we welcome and support the concept note. China will actively participate in the deliberations of relevant working groups and in the preparatory activities, work towards positive outcomes at the June high-level conference, and take practical and strong action to realize the two-state solution. Thank you, co-chairs.
I thank the distinguished representative of China. And now I give the floor to the distinguished representative of Austria.
Thank you, Madam Co-Chair. Austria remains a staunch supporter of a comprehensive, just and lasting peace in the Middle East based on the two-state solution. We welcome the aim and the spirit of this high-level conference, which we hope will contribute meaningfully to that objective. Two democratic states, Israel and Palestine, living side by side in peace and security, with Gaza as an integral part of the Palestinian state, must remain our common vision. Let me now share just a few select reflections in the spirit of saving time, and we will, of course, provide full written submissions to the working groups. First, on the achievement of a two-state solution, Austria will continue to support the Palestinian people's right to self-determination and the establishment of a democratic, contiguous and viable Palestinian state. Austria supports a negotiated solution between the two parties. Gaza must remain Palestinian. Any forced displacement or annexation is categorically rejected. Hamas must play no role in Gaza's future governance. Austria stands ready to continue to assist the Palestinian Authority, including through financial support and capacity building programs. On security, Israel's legitimate security concerns must be a central consideration. Terrorism must be rejected by all actors in the region, and all hostages must immediately be released. International humanitarian and human rights law must be fully respected by all parties. The protection of civilians is paramount and a ceasefire is essential. Austria would support a UN-mandated stabilization or protection mission to monitor the disarmament of Hamas and a ceasefire, if accepted by the parties. As a part of the efforts of regional integration and normalization, Austria would support the establishment of an inclusive regional security architecture, with a similar premise as the OSCE in Europe. On reconstruction, humanitarian aid and economic viability, the destruction and devastation in Gaza have reached unacceptable levels. We therefore urge immediate, unhindered humanitarian access at scale. Austria will not support any mechanism for humanitarian aid that fails to comply with the humanitarian principles and puts vulnerable people at risk. We fully support the Arab reconstruction plan and stand ready to contribute financially when conditions allow. And Austria will continue to financially and politically support the work of UNRWA, while the agency must continue on its path for reforms. This is just a short excerpt of the broader submissions we will provide to the working groups. Colleagues, we stand ready to continue to engage constructively in this process and reserve the right to provide additional input at a later stage. Thank you.
Je remercie le représentant de
I thank the representative of Austria, and I invite the representative of Lebanon to take the floor.
السيدة الرئيسة.
Madam Chair, at the outset, I would like to express Lebanon's gratitude to the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and the French Republic for their initiative and for chairing the International Conference for the Peaceful Settlement of the Palestine question and the implementation of the two-state solution next month. This reflects their commitment to finding a just and comprehensive solution to the Palestine issue based on international legitimacy and principles of international law. I also extend my thanks to the heads of the 8 working groups for their diligent work. The convening of this conference represents a renewed opportunity to revive hope for a long-awaited, just and comprehensive solution in our region, which has been wary of conflicts and wars over the years. Madam Chair, our meeting today comes 2 days after the visit of the Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas to Beirut, where Lebanon's supportive stance on the Palestinian issue was reaffirmed. Lebanon has always stood by the Palestinian people in their legitimate struggle to recover their rights and has paid a high price for the Palestinian cause. Lebanon reaffirms its adherence to the Arab Peace Initiative in Beirut and to the principle of the two-state solution, which guarantees the establishment of an independent, sovereign Palestinian state within the borders of June 4, 1967, with East Jerusalem as its capital. When discussing the question of Palestine, we should not overlook the fundamental right of the Palestinian refugees to return to Palestine, as stipulated by international resolutions, particularly General Assembly Resolution 194. In this regard, Lebanon reiterates that it is not a country of asylum or resettlement, as stated in Lebanon's constitution. Madam Chair, Lebanon also emphasizes the need to find a permanent solution to the Palestinian arms issue in Lebanon within the framework of extending the sovereignty of the Lebanese state on all its territories and confining arms to the Lebanese armed forces. The joint Lebanese-Palestinian Committee to follow up on the situation of the Palestinian camps in Lebanon, which was agreed upon during the last meeting and which is to be created soon. So it was agreed to launch a process of disarmament within a defined timeline. Lebanon also reaffirms the right of the Palestinian refugees to live with dignity until the right of return is achieved, and the importance of maintaining UNRWA, which is indispensable, and the importance of providing Arab and international support to UNRWA. Mr. Chair, after 80 years of war and conflicts in the Middle East as a whole, and after all the tragedies witnessed by Palestine and the region, it is time to take bold decisions and practical steps by all of us as an international community to resolve this bitter conflict and to achieve a just and comprehensive peace. Thank you, Chair.
أشكر سعادة ممثل دولة لبنان. And now
I thank the distinguished representative of Lebanon.
Gracias, señora copresidenta.
Thank you, Madam Co-Chair. Co-chairs, distinguished colleagues, we're grateful for the convening of this meeting, and we are grateful for this opportunity to discuss the 8 working groups of the conference. It's not possible to achieve peace in the Middle East without a fair solution to the Palestinian question, which means impeding by all means the government of Israel destroying the state of Palestine to achieve the two-state solution. At this time, we believe it's essential that the roundtables and the conference bear in mind the following elements. Firstly, the immediate and unconditional admission of Palestine as a member state of the UN. This is a crucial step to move towards the lasting settlement of the conflict, and so that Palestine can take up the right role for it that has been a long-standing issue within the organization. Our efforts in the conference should respond to the legitimate rights of the Palestinians to write in peace and exercise their right to self-determination within the pre-1967 borders, with East Jerusalem as their capital, so as to also guarantee the right to return of refugees. Thirdly, the steps that we take during the conference should lead to bringing an end to collective punishment, apartheid, genocide against our Palestinian brothers, and the Israeli settlement building policies and the plans leading to the forced displacement of Palestinians, as well as crimes against humanity. We should stop as soon as possible the extermination of this kindred people. We cannot continue to see the attacks on critical civilian infrastructure and others over the last few months, which represent war crimes. Fifthly, it is urgent to take urgent measures within the Security Council to curb the genocide in Gaza and enable the entry of sufficient unfettered humanitarian aid for Palestinians, and to re-establish the crucial work of UNRWA. We need to urgently restore also the ceasefire. Seventhly, we underscore that any reconstruction and recovery plan should focus on achieving the legitimate aspirations of the Palestinian people and guaranteeing their right to return and to self-determination. Finally, Cuba will continue to contribute to all legitimate international efforts to ensure a fair, comprehensive settlement to the situation in the Middle East. We hope that the holding of this conference will contribute to moving towards a two-state solution. Thank you. I thank the representative of Cuba, and I invite the representative of Morocco to take the floor.
Your Excellencies, distinguished co-chairs, at the outset, allow me to sincerely reaffirm the Kingdom of Morocco's full support to the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and the French Republic for their able co-chairmanship of the upcoming high-level international conference on the implementation of the two-state solution scheduled to take place from the 17th to 28th June 2025. We would also like to lend our full support to the distinguished co-chairs of the 8th thematic roundtables proposed within the framework of this high-level collective conference for their insightful presentation. These roundtables represent a valuable opportunity to strengthen collective commitment towards the implementation of the two-state solution. Towards the conference and its outcome, the outcomes of this conference will be pivotal to the Palestinian cause, and we remain optimistic that they would help in achieving the goal of establishing a lasting and irreversible peace in the region. The Kingdom of Morocco, under the far-sighted leadership of His Majesty King Mohammed VI, may God assist him as the chairman of Al-Quds Committee of the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, remains convinced that the Palestinian cause is a central matter for achieving lasting peace, security, and stability in the Middle East. From this perspective, and as stated in a panoply of UN resolution, the two-state solution remains the only viable path to enabling all people of the region to live in security, peace, and harmony. Excellencies, esteemed co-chairs, the Kingdom of Morocco is pleased to express its interest in actively participating in roundtables 1 and 4, and has already submitted preliminary contribution in this regard. Following the launch of the Global Alliance for the Implementation of the Two-State Solution during the High-Level Week Conference in the UN General Assembly in September 2024, and subsequent meetings held in Riyadh, Brussels, Oslo, and Cairo, and the Kingdom of Morocco, in partnership with the Kingdom of Netherlands, co-hosted in Rabat on 20th and 21st May 2025, the 5th meeting of the Global Alliance under the theme Sustaining Momentum for the Peace Process, Lessons Learned, Success Stories, and Steps Forward. The meeting is anchored on the Kingdom's ongoing commitment to the justice of the Palestinian cause. Indeed, the Rabat meeting has reflected on key lessons from previous peace initiatives, the progress achieved in the Palestinian institution building, and the imperative of addressing economic aspects as a prerequisite for the two-state solution. Its primary focus has been centered on providing peace space for concrete policy recommendations and high-level exchange, focusing on governance, trust building, and sustainable development. These are and remains our strong convincement that the outcome of the Rabat meeting will significantly enrich the outcome of the upcoming international conference. And in this regard, we are pleased to inform that the Kingdom of Morocco and the Kingdom of the Netherlands have already submitted joint contribution to the co-chairs of the thematic roundtables 1 and 4. Let us be clear. All the Global Alliance meetings, including the recent one in Rabat, had all a clear common objective, which is translating our collective efforts into practical steps toward achieving the two-state solution as the only solution capable of fostering peace and dignity and enriching the legitimate rights of the Palestinians and guaranteeing security and stability for the state of Israel. Economic development is an essential pillar for the viable and independent Palestinian state. Thus, strong and resilient economic ties between Palestinians and Israelis can reinforce the peace process and ensure mutual prosperity. To conclude, the Kingdom of Morocco reaffirms its unwavering and historic stance on the justice of the Palestinian cause and the legitimate rights of the Palestinian people. These rights include the right to establish an independent Palestinian state based on the 1967 borders with East Jerusalem as its capital. We will remain fully engaged on this ongoing process, and we look forward to the achievement of a fruitful and action-oriented outcome during the upcoming high-level conference. I thank you.
أشكر سعادة ممثلة
I thank the distinguished representative of the Kingdom of Morocco.
Shukran jazilan. Excellencies, co-chairs, Denmark's support for the two-state solution is as the only comprehensive, just, and lasting solution to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict is long-standing and unwavering. We already have the frameworks through the relevant UN resolutions. What we need now is implementation or action, as already mentioned by many speakers here this morning. The upcoming high-level conference will be critical for developing tangible and actionable steps. I wish to thank France and Saudi Arabia for steering this timely effort. Let me also thank all the working group chairs for their presentations. Allow me just to make a few points about humanitarian assistance and early recovery access across the occupied Palestinian territory, as well as reform and revitalization of the Palestinian Authority to help ensure the success of the Palestinian government. First, we are mindful that in the short term, humanitarian assistance will remain critical for the survival of hundreds of thousands of Palestinians, particularly in Gaza, who are at risk of starvation. Denmark is considering how best to support the Palestinian people, including through humanitarian assistance. In this regard, we reaffirm that until a two-state solution is realized and UNRWA can hand over its state-like services, UNRWA has a unique mandate from the General Assembly to deliver essential services to Palestine refugees across the Middle East. As for the preparations of reconstruction efforts in Gaza, we welcome the Arab Reconstruction Plan. We look forward to further discussions within its framework on early recovery and reconstruction once the time is right for such steps. Second, reform and revitalization of the Palestinian Authority is indispensable as the foundation for the establishment of a Palestinian state and for fostering sustainable governance and economic development. A first step in this regard will be to secure the financial survival of the PA. The PA must also be assisted in extending its authority to both the West Bank and Gaza to form one legitimate Palestinian government. Hamas can never be allowed to play a role in the future of Gaza. Throughout the years, Denmark has worked with the PA and relevant Palestinian institutions with a view to improve the living conditions of Palestinians while also building the capacity of national structures, notably in the municipal sector. Together with the European Union, we will continue to support the Palestinian Authority along its current path of reform. We are encouraged by the work done so far by the PA and the EU, agreeing on a multi-annual program for Palestinian recovery and resilience linked to the progress made on key reforms in fiscal sustainability, democratic governance, private sector development, and public infrastructure and services. We would encourage other donors to contribute to the EU's future Palestine donor platform to support this work. Finally, on this point, we believe that stronger regional economic ties is a prerequisite both for economic development in Palestine and for political stability of the PA. It deserves special attention as it will contribute decisively to regional security. Co-chairs, to conclude, Denmark believes that two-state solution, we believe in the two-state solution because we are committed to a future where Palestinians and Israelis alike live side by side in peace as coexistence, just as we all committed to decades ago. We are hopeful that the upcoming high-level international conference will be a decisive step towards achieving this future. I thank you.
Je remercie la représentante du Danemark.
I thank the representative of Denmark, and I give the floor to the representative of Kuwait.
Thank you, Mr. Co-Chair. I am pleased to extend my sincere thanks and appreciation to the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and the French Republic for inviting us to convene the senior-level preparatory meeting for the high-level international conference for the peaceful settlement of the question of Palestine and the implementation of the two-state solution in accordance with General Assembly Resolution A/79/81 adopted in December of last year. We aim for this conference to be practical, pragmatic, and include tangible steps that can be implemented on the ground. From this standpoint, we must begin with ourselves and through our statements. Accordingly, we will not take your time reiterating the state of Kuwait's firm and principled position in support of the Palestinian rights, but we will delve directly into the heart of the matter. We are at a crossroad and critical historical turning point. Either international legitimacy and international law prevails, or our international community and multilateral action succumb to illegal unilateral actions. This conference should not be a platform for listening to the usual rhetoric and statements. Conferences and summits are useless unless they produce a concrete roadmap that can be implemented and applied on the ground. Therefore, our words must be translated into real action. Based on the above, we urge all member states to spare no effort in providing the co-chairs and the 8 working groups their inputs so that we can genuinely prepare for a concrete conference. We would like to highlight what we believe is important to translate on the ground through concrete steps. 1, expressing a categorical rejection of any attempt to displace the Palestinian people from their land in any way and for any purpose. Second, we urge everyone to recognize the Palestinian state. What is the benefit and purpose of supporting Palestine without recognizing their international independent state, which has existed throughout history? Third, it is time for the state of Palestine to obtain full membership in the United Nations. How long will the international community accept the double standards we see only in relation to Palestine? Fourth, supporting the Arab plan for the reconstruction of Gaza, as it was carefully and skillfully formulated in a comprehensive and integrated manner. Fifth, the need to strengthen the efforts of the international coalition to implement the two-state solution and to leverage this coalition to create the necessary momentum towards the international conference next June by circulating it on all regional and international platforms. Sixth, holding Israel, the occupying power, legally accountable for the killing and destruction it has caused, which has exceeded human and moral capacity, by applying international law, international humanitarian law, General Assembly resolutions, Security Council resolutions, human rights resolutions, in addition to implementing decisions by the International Criminal Court and the International Court of Justice. The occupying power must immediately end its ongoing occupation since 1967, cease its arbitrary measures against the Palestinian people and their occupied territory, return property to its legitimate owners, and provide compensation to those harmed by its illegal practices and illegitimately of Israeli settlements and settlers. Eighth, the most important point is to establish a clear mechanism with a specific time frame for achieving a two-state solution. There is no path or way forward except through it. Only the two-state solution will achieve complete and comprehensive peace in the region and the world. Thank you.
أشكر سعادة ممثل دولة
I thank His Excellency, representative of the state of Kuwait.
Distinguished representative of Slovenia.
Thank you very much. Thank you to our French and Saudi friends for all the efforts that you are making in this conference to happen and to have the tangible results. Two people, two states, no more delay. I would like to offer some highlights on the basis of the active role that my country, Slovenia, has been playing understanding the responsibility at this moment in history, in time. Number one is recognition and normalization aspects. Slovenia is established on the basis of the principle of self-determination, very dear to our heart. Following our independence, diplomatic relations with Israel were established in 1992, and the embassy in Tel Aviv was opened in 1994. Diplomatic relations with Palestine were established on 5th of June 2024, a day after recognition of the state of Palestine and 17 years after the opening of our representation in Ramallah. We are now in the process of elaborating ways to strengthen relations, including through a possible bilateral agreement or opening the Embassy of Palestine in Ljubljana. We call others to recognize Palestine and normalize ties with Israel, paving way for regional security and cooperation. Number two is our role as a Security Council member. We have been actively engaging since day one of our membership, calling for a strong role of the Council and making sure its internal divisions do not entirely prevent its actions. However, Security Council has not done enough, and to put it simply, it must step up. Slovenia was among the Council members voting in favor of Palestine's full membership in the UN last year. We assume our responsibility also through participating at the ICG proceedings as well as in the EU fora. And what EU is doing was well and nice elaborated by the USR Di Maio. Number three is on always placing people first. This includes our support to UNRWA, which remains indispensable until a just and lasting solution to the question of Palestine. We reaffirm our support to the agency and are looking at enhancing our strategic partnership through an agreement. Placing people first also means support reconstruction and rehabilitation, including through the Arab Reconstruction Plan. Slovenia has significantly increased humanitarian aid to the Palestinian people. For the past 15 years, Slovenia has been providing medical and psychosocial rehabilitation to the Palestinian children. We're looking at the other areas where we could contribute in the line of our past engagement, including in the area of demanding and women, peace and security. We suggest a compilation of commitments of possible concrete contribution, and Palestine ownership is central to the two-state solution, and we pursue discussions with the Palestinian Authority as well as with Israel. Let me at the end commend the role the Global Alliance has in this concrete issue that we are dealing now with the conference, and Slovenia is looking really forward to working with the co-chairs of the working groups and the rest of the membership in the run-up of the conference. Thank you.
Je remercie la représentante de Slovenie.
I thank the representative of Slovenia and invite the representative of Pakistan to take the floor.
Thank you. I would like to thank Saudi Arabia and France for convening this preparatory meeting, and we also are grateful to the co-chairs of the working groups for their valuable briefings. This conference is both timely and essential. The continued suffering of the Palestinian people, the unfolding humanitarian catastrophe in Gaza, and the systematic erosion of the objective of the two-state solution through illegal settlements and various other unilateral measures by the occupying power demand a resolute international response. Pakistan remains steadfast in its support for a just, lasting, and comprehensive solution to the Palestinian question, rooted in international law and relevant UN resolutions, based on pre-1967 borders, with Al-Quds al-Sharif as the capital of an independent state of Palestine. This conference, we believe, must serve as a turning point and deliver tangible outcomes. We reaffirm our full commitment to this process and to actively engage in the June conference. We will submit our inputs to the respective working groups. All of these working groups are very important, and we will contribute to help shape action-oriented deliverables. In the lead up to June, it is imperative to restore and fully implement a ceasefire in Gaza, to lift the blockade, ensure unimpeded humanitarian access, including through UNRWA, and to protect civilians and aid workers. Any attempt to forcibly displace Palestinians, annex territory, or impose militarized aid mechanisms must be firmly rejected. To preserve the viability of a Palestinian statehood, among other steps, we believe that this conference must establish a mechanism to monitor and promote enforcement of relevant Security Council resolutions, including 242, 446, and 2334, which termed settlements illegal. This should be coupled with diplomatic efforts to secure Palestine's admission as a full UN member state. And secondly, this conference should operationalize the Gaza reconstruction plan endorsed by the OIC and the Arab group. Projects such as Gaza West Bank Transit Corridor, seaport reconstruction, and industrial zones are vital for territorial contiguity and Palestinian unity. Ultimately, this conference must address the root cause, that is, Israel's prolonged occupation. Only by ending the occupation can we secure a just and lasting peace. Pakistan stands ready to support this conference and contribute to a credible political horizon for a two-state solution, one that upholds Palestinian rights, including right to self-determination, ends occupation, and delivers durable peace through a viable, sovereign Palestinian state with East Jerusalem as its capital. I thank you.
I thank the distinguished representative of Pakistan, and now I give the floor to the distinguished representative of the Russian Federation.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Co-chairs, we'd like to thank you for the painstaking work you did so as to convene and prepare today's meeting, as well as the upcoming International High-Level Conference in New York on the peaceful settlement of the question of Palestine and the implementation of the two-state solution. We believe it's absolutely vital to convene such an international forum, which should foster the restoration of peace and stability in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict zone and in the Middle East as a whole, through the commencement of the two-state solution process for Palestine. Further reaffirmation of the broad international consensus in support of the legitimate aspirations and rights of Palestinians, especially to self-determination and return, is something that is in high demand, especially as we lay an internationally recognized legal framework in the face of, especially for UN structures which will be implementing them, specifically UNRWA. We are also setting a course. We're also seeing a course of irreversible facts on the ground being created on the occupied Palestinian territory, OPT. We sent our comments to the co-chairs of the working groups. Our comments underscored the fact that today's situation in the OPT is unacceptable. The actions of Israel have resulted in a humanitarian catastrophe. We noted in our comments that the way towards the Palestinian people achieving self-determination requires the implementation of the internationally recognized framework for settlement, because Israel is duty-bound to resume and to pursue negotiations in good faith so as to achieve a final settlement. Other states and international organizations are duty-bound to facilitate this process. As a result, we should be able to ensure the establishment of an independent Palestinian state within 1967 borders, with East Jerusalem as its capital, coexisting in peace and security with Israel. On our side, throughout many years, we have facilitated the Israeli-Palestinian settlement process. We voted in favor of all relevant UNGA resolutions. We also provided assistance to Palestinians, both bilaterally and through relevant UN agencies. We ensured that this issue maintained a high profile in the Security Council, at the General Assembly, and at the ICJ. Therefore, we intend to actively participate in the upcoming conference, including in the working groups. We deem the upcoming conference to be an important opportunity for other states to also demonstrate their commitment to the settlement process and to the Palestinian cause specifically. For Palestinians, it should be an opportunity to come up with concrete initiatives. We also have a number of practical questions we'd like to put to the co-chairs in light of the upcoming conference. We will be contacting the co-chairs. Thank you very much. I thank the representative of the Russian Federation. I now invite the representative of Australia to take the floor.
Thank you, co-chairs. Australia thanks France and the United Kingdom of Saudi Arabia for their efforts to re-establish momentum for a two-state solution at a time when progress is desperately needed. As Australia's Foreign Minister said at the United Nations General Assembly last year, Australia shares the frustration of the great majority of countries. More than 77 years since the world adopted Resolution 181, a Palestinian state still does not exist. A two-state solution, a Palestinian state alongside the State of Israel, is the only hope of breaking the endless cycle of violence and the only hope of a just and enduring peace for Israelis and Palestinians alike. Like other partners, Australia no longer sees recognition of a Palestinian state as only occurring at the end of negotiations, but rather as a way of building momentum towards a two-state solution. To that end, Australia welcomes the conference's ambition of a time-bound, irreversible pathway towards a two-state solution. Australia has made clear it sees no role for Hamas in a future Palestinian state. Hamas is a terrorist organization. A Palestinian state cannot be in a position to threaten Israel's security. A durable peace will require a reformed Palestinian Authority, and Australia has committed to support public administration capacity building. A durable peace will require Israel to be recognized by the countries of its region. A durable peace will also require all sides to respect the right of others to exist. It calls for people to see each other's humanity. In that vein, we look forward to participating in Working Group 3 on narratives for peace, combating hate speech, incitement, violent extremism and dehumanization. As we sit here, we cannot lose focus on the immediate crisis. Australia is horrified by the humanitarian catastrophe in Gaza and calls on the parties to return to a ceasefire, for civilians to be protected and for hostages to be released. Australia is part of the international call on Israel to allow the full and immediate resumption of aid into Gaza. Palestinian civilians cannot be made to pay the price for defeating Hamas. We reaffirm our view that the United Nations remains best placed to deliver this assistance. The United Nations is ready to respond to critical needs now and in line with humanitarian principles, neutrality, humanity, impartiality, independence. With our deep concern for the humanitarian crisis, Australia welcomes the opportunity to contribute to Working Group 5 on humanitarian action and reconstruction. Thank you.
I thank the distinguished representative of Australia. And now I give the floor to the distinguished representative of Oman.
Excellencies, co-chairs, the delegation of the Sultanate of Oman appreciates the efforts of France and the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. We are pleased to participate in this preparatory meeting, which comes at a critical moment in the history of the Palestinian issue. We view this as an important milestone in the joint preparation for the international conference. The peoples of the region and the international community hopes that this conference will pave the way towards a just and comprehensive peaceful settlement based on international law and relevant UN resolutions. The Sultanate of Oman has always been a supporter of the two-state solution as the only viable framework to end the occupation and to achieve the aspirations of the Palestinian people in establishing their independent state within the borders of June 4, 1967, with East Jerusalem as its capital. This would ensure security and stability for all the peoples of the region. We emphasized the importance of adhering to all established peace references, including Security Council resolutions and the ICJ advisory opinions, as well as the Arab Peace Initiative. The challenges facing this solution today requires us to collectively reaffirm the fundamental principles and to create a negotiating environment based on mutual respect, international legitimacy, and balance between rights and obligation. From this standpoint, the Sultanate of Oman values this preparatory process. We commend the collaborative efforts in preparing the work axes and substantive deliberations that will contribute to shaping the contours of the conference. The Sultanate of Oman confirms that its participation in this preparatory process comes within the framework of its continuous support for international efforts aimed at resuming the political process. We are ready to positively engage with the working groups and their outcomes. We are committed to carefully studying the proposals in preparation for making our contribution in the next phase in line with our steadfast position and responsibility towards the Palestinian issue. Thank you.
I thank the representative of Oman and give the floor to the representative of Colombia.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Colombia is grateful for the work, the efforts, and the commitment of France and Saudi Arabia in this process. We also thank all of those countries that are co-chairing each of the thematic groups. We support the inclusive nature of the guiding documents for this conference and their action-oriented approach, focused on coming up with specific initiatives to establish an irreversible path towards implementing UN resolutions relating to the question of Palestine and the two-state solution. The work streams proposed are closely interlinked, and the timing of our work on them is important so that we can prioritize alleviating the humanitarian situation in Palestine and negotiating acceptable security guarantees for both states. Likewise, it's important as we work towards the conference to ensure that we have a dialogue between the different working groups so that the outcome document from the conference contains a consistent, viable roadmap. Chairs, Colombia trusts that the conference will generate the right incentives and lead to specific steps that allow us to bring an end to the suffering of the Palestinian people and to build a path towards a two-state solution for two states living in peace and security. You can count on Colombia's support. Thank you.
I thank the distinguished representative, and now I give the floor to the distinguished representative of Bahrain.
Thank you for giving me the floor. Can I take the floor following the next speaker? Thank you very much.
I thank the distinguished representative of Bahrain. I now give the floor to the representative of Switzerland. Thank you very much. We'd like to thank France and Saudi Arabia for their efforts aimed at convening this conference. We stand determined to continue contributing to the work already underway so as to achieve a political solution underpinned by two states as well as compliance with international law, including relevant Security Council resolutions. We hope that the outcome document of the June conference will include a plan which sets forth concrete and irreversible measures in the short, medium and long term with a view to achieving the aforementioned objective. Turning to the work of the first working group, we'd like to propose supporting the efforts undertaken by the Palestinian Authority so as to re-establish a civilian administration in Gaza. And Switzerland has recognized expertise in this area as we facilitated processes in 2014-2015 within the framework of the roadmap. It goes without saying that the situation is very different today, but drawing on our experience and working closely with the Palestinian Authority, Switzerland is trying to come up with pragmatic solutions and concrete measures so as to support the efforts of the Palestinian Authority so as to establish a functional, effective and lasting administration which can provide services to Palestinians. Thus, Switzerland will help bolster the Palestinian Authority and at the same time meet the needs of the Palestinian people as well as the reconstruction effort. In light of the work being done by Working Group 3, Narratives for Peace, I'd like to say the following. This situation, as things stand, clearly demonstrates that only the most radical, the most extreme elements are benefiting from the violence. To put an end to this, we need decisive and responsible political leadership rooted in international law. And this leadership needs to be side by side with the Palestinian Authority. At the same time, we need dialogue including all of society as a whole. Furthermore, it's necessary to foster links between the population and political leaders. Political leaders must commit to the two-state solution in accordance with international law. In order to settle this conflict, compliance with international law is particularly important. In fact, it's indispensable, and that applies to all working groups across the board. In this spirit, we have submitted a number of suggestions to the co-chairs of Working Group 7. For instance, it's important for all states to take the necessary measures to ensure respect for international humanitarian law by the parties to the conflict. We shouldn't encourage violations of international humanitarian law. We should rather exert our influence insofar as is possible to put an end to such incidents. States could, on a voluntary basis, in the year 12 months following the June conference, could send a note outlining what they've done in order to implement the outcome document and to shoulder their obligations under international humanitarian law, including measures they've taken to suppress violations of IHL. Article 149 of the Fourth Geneva Convention establishes a fact-finding mechanism, as do other documents. And this provides a basis for the parties to investigate into alleged violations of IHL, therefore ensuring respect for international humanitarian law is restored. Another measure that's been proposed is for states to strictly define in legal terms how national security considerations can be legitimately invoked to avoid abuses thereof. In its pleadings to the ICJ on the advisory opinion underway outlined these, and we submitted these to the co-chairs as well. Thank you, Chair.
I thank the distinguished representative of Switzerland, and now I give the floor to the distinguished representative of Turkey.
Madam Chair, we are delivering this statement in our national capacity. We express our appreciation for the organization of this conference. Hopefully, it will contribute to advancement of implementation of the two-state solution that would allow both Palestine and Israel living side by side in peace. We wish the best of success to not only co-chairs of the conference, Saudi Arabia and France, but also everyone here who strive for a just and lasting solution. We assume responsibility of co-chairing the Roundtable 6 on preserving the two-state solution together with Ireland. We will engage constructively in the preparation process. There is no alternative to the two-state solution, and yet its implementation is long overdue. We need to advance it by taking concrete steps. This conference should give a clear message to those who are not prioritizing peace. We need to make it clear that evading the two-state solution is not an option. What stands in the way is continuing Israeli occupation of the Palestinian territory and Israel's denial of rights of Palestinian people. This must end. The path to follow is taking concrete action despite the denial. Giving concrete support to implementation of the two-state solution will surely have impact. It can change the political landscape and give hope to Palestinians. We believe we can elaborate on the following steps in our work. Recognition of the State of Palestine. Admission of the State of Palestine as a full member of the United Nations. Empowering the Palestinian Authority in any way possible, be it financially or capacity building wise. Taking measures against settlements and settler violence towards Palestinians in the occupied Palestinian territory. Demolitions and land confiscations. Sanctions, economic and trade. Arms transfer ban. Isolating the occupying power in international organizations. In our input to roundtables, we detailed them. It should also be highlighted that in its landmark advisory opinion of 19 July 2024, the International Court of Justice enumerated obligations of both Israel and member states. These are known to all of us, as the General Assembly adopted a resolution on the implementation of this advisory opinion. In short, what needs to be done is clear. The rest is about political will. We already submitted our input to other roundtables. So far, for its part, Turkey took several concrete steps, including recalling its ambassador from Tel Aviv, cutting off its trade with Israel, declaration of intervention in the case brought against Israel before the ICJ on the ground that Israel violated its obligations under 1948 Convention on Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide, taking part in advisory opinion processes of the ICJ, treating Palestine favorably in terms of tariffs in a specific agricultural product, extending humanitarian aid in Gaza, taking initiative to have arms transfers to Israel halted. We believe a lasting peace is a must. We shouldn't let warmongering and incite for violence to take over the political discourse. Security is for all, and a guarantee mechanism should be worked out for a future peace deal. We remain ready to take responsibility if the idea materializes. Thank you very much.
Je remercie le représentant.
I thank the representative of Turkey, and I give the floor to the representative of India. And I would like to remind speakers to please be brief in their statements so that all delegations wishing to take the floor can do so. Thank you.
distinguished co-chairs, I thank France and Saudi Arabia for their leadership in anchoring this very important initiative. I also thank the co-chairs of the 4 working groups for outlining their vision and approach on each of these 4 groups. In the interest of time, I'd like to make the following brief points. First, India has been a consistent advocate of the two-state solution. India was also the first non-Arab country to recognize the state of Palestine more than 3.5 decades ago. The overwhelming sentiment in the room today is very clear. A vast majority of member states support the two-state solution. A pragmatic and operational approach is critical to realizing this vision. India will be guided by this spirit in its engagements related to the high-level conference in June this year. Second, India has also been underlining the centrality of the provision of security to both parties in efforts aimed at achieving the two-state solution. Absence of concrete mechanisms that would safeguard the security interests of both sides would not be conducive to push forward a two-state solution. Third, all stakeholders must contribute to a constructive narrative on peace and coexistence leading towards a two-state solution. And fourth, member states could look at some of the available initiatives and frameworks towards ensuring that the cycle of violence does not repeat, and measures are instituted to support peace and maximize peace dividends. I thank you, co-chairs.
I thank the distinguished representative of India, and now I give the floor to the distinguished representative of Bahrain.
Co-chairs, at the outset, I would like to express my thanks and appreciation to the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and the French Republic for their great efforts as co-chairs of this conference. I would also like to thank the co-chairs of all the working groups for their important effort. During the presidency of the Bahrain of the Arab Summit, the Kingdom was keen to unify the Arab position to bring about peace in the world while focusing on alleviating the suffering of the most vulnerable segments in conflicts and crises, especially those deprived from basic rights. The Kingdom of Bahrain stresses that the two-state solution is not just a political objective. Instead, it's a necessity, a humanitarian necessity and a legal obligation based on international legitimacy. It's the only thing that will break the cycle of violence and open new horizons for this region. We cannot turn a blind eye to the current crisis in the Gaza Strip. We have to reach an immediate and permanent ceasefire and ensure the release of hostages and provide humanitarian access without hindering. The Kingdom of Bahrain stresses that any long-term settlement of the situation of Gaza must focus on reconstruction without any forced displacement of inhabitants and put an effective governing process that would ensure stability in Gaza. Arab countries reiterated their commitment to the Arab plan that was adopted in the Emergency Arab Summit held in Cairo last March. This plan sets a clear roadmap for the reconstruction of Gaza. The Kingdom of Bahrain reiterates its support to the global coalition for the implementation of the two-state solution launched by the brotherly Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. We also stress the importance of continuing to build on the momentum generated with the serious participation of all parties. We can be closer to the implementation of the two-state solution. Thank you.
Je remercie le représentant du
I thank the representative of Bahrain, and I give the floor to the representative of Finland.
Thank you. Thank you, Co-Chair. First of all, I would like to join the colleagues in thanking the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and France for convening this conference to all the colleagues for working so hard on the working groups. Finland wishes to express its continued strong commitment to the two-state solution and its support to the June conference, which is perhaps even more timely than we could have thought, taking into account the events on the ground, especially in Gaza, but also in the West Bank. Finland is a long-term supporter of the Palestinian Authority and a contributor also to the EU's work in Palestine. The latter, for instance, through the security enhancing operations of EU POLCOPS and EU BAM Rafah. All of this has contributed towards the strengthening of the foundations of a future independent Palestinian state. We are also a long-term supporter of UNRWA, and likewise, over many years, we have engaged with the civil societies on both sides, promoting dialogue and understanding between people. The two-state solution is long overdue, and the more overdue it is, the more difficult questions we have at hand. The key question, perhaps, is moving from the well-thought-out measures presented also today to real action. This requires not only good preparation, but also and especially political will and commitment. In this respect, pacing, sequencing, and balancing the technical work with political work would be very important, both at international and domestic levels. It will also be important to see where to start to address the urgency of action that we know is required and that has been mentioned also here several times. For the good follow-up of this discussion and the discussions in June, it would be a welcome step to integrate this work with the work of the Global Alliance or other relevant operational platforms. All in all, it will be important to ensure that the parties of the two-state solution are subjects of this process, not objects to this process. Thank you, co-chairs.
I thank the distinguished representative of Finland, and now I give the floor to the distinguished representative of Bangladesh.
Thank you, Madam Co-Chair, for giving me the floor. At the outset, let me commend co-chairs France and Saudi Arabia and all 8 working group members for the excellent work carried by you. Co-chairs, Bangladesh remains steadfast and unequivocal in its call on the international community to work collectively towards a two-state solution of the Palestinian issue based on the international law, United Nations resolutions, and the aspiration of the people of Palestine with dignity and justice. To this end, we welcome the convening of the high-level international conference in June this year. Co-chairs, Bangladesh is deeply concerned at the ongoing violence, escalation of devastation, and the immense suffering of the civilians in Gaza, especially women and children. It is imperative that we mobilize all of our efforts to secure peace and security in the region while extending political, economic, and financial support to Palestine. In this regard, we emphasize that the high-level conference would focus on the following key priorities. First, adoption of immediate and effective steps towards the implementation of an unconditional ceasefire and the cessation of all hostilities to safeguard civilian lives. Second, strengthening of UNRWA, which is the lifeline for the Palestinian people, and resisting any attempt to hinder its operations to ensure unimpeded delivery of humanitarian aid to Gaza. Third, mobilizing new resources and funding to support the people who are suffering the humanitarian catastrophe and implementing an effective and sustainable reconstruction plan for Gaza. Fourth, ensuring accountability for genocidal killings, standing in solidarity with the ICC and supporting implementation of its rulings. Fifth, taking concrete and effective measures for establishing an independent, viable, and sovereign state of Palestine based on the pre-1967 borders with East Jerusalem as its capital, which is the only path to sustainable solution to the crisis. In this endeavor, Madam Chair, please count on our full commitment and constructive engagement. Thank you.
Je remercie le représentant du...
I thank the representative of Bangladesh, and I invite the representative of Brazil to take the floor.
Mesdames les co-présidentes,
Madam Co-Chairs, dear colleagues, Brazil welcomes the holding of this conference at such a crucial time in light of the continued deterioration of the situation in the occupied Palestinian territory. We hope that it will represent a true turning point towards peace, justice, and security in the Middle East. The success of the conference will depend on our collective ability to see concrete and measurable outcomes, but we also need to come up with an effective follow-up mechanism to ensure the achievement of the agreements the objectives that we agree on there. Since the beginning of this process, Brazil has been fully committed. We have contributed actively to the different working groups by responding to the guiding questions and by putting forward realistic, pragmatic proposals anchored in international law and to guarantee an effective implementation of the two-state solution. The next few weeks will be decisive. We need to mobilize all of the international community, member states, United Nations, regional and international organizations, civil society, and other stakeholders. By pooling our efforts in a spirit of shared responsibility, we will be able to move ahead together on the path towards true and lasting peace. The topics addressed at the conference are all closely interrelated. They all converge towards a common goal, that is, achieving a peaceful solution to the Palestinian question through the establishment of a sovereign, internationally recognized Palestinian state living side by side with Israel in peace and security, with the pre-1967 borders and East Jerusalem as its capital. We must work to building peace and writing a new chapter of the history of the Middle East. This will include sizable economic support, particularly to strengthen the Palestinian authorities, but also to rebuild Gaza and the affected areas of the West Bank, and to ensure decent living standards once again to the people who have been so harshly affected. However, it's also crucial to support humanitarian assistance, ensure civilian protection and protection for humanitarian personnel, as well as ensuring the irreplaceable role of UNRWA, particularly because its services will be necessary to build and consolidate the state of Palestine. Brazil encourages states that have not yet done so to recognize the state of Palestine, this in line with the right of the Palestinian people to self-determination. This recognition is essential as a member state of the UN, is essential to put the parties on an equal footing. Dear colleagues, international law is not an abstract principle. It is a specific tool that we use to forge peace. There is already a clear set of legal obligations that we have to implement. All states are duty-bound to respect and promote international law, the UN Charter, international humanitarian law, and human rights. Upholding the law is an essential precondition for achieving a fair and lasting peace. To do this in the Middle East, it's crucial that we preserve and implement the two-state solution by actively combating any measures that might compromise its viability on the ground. Thank you.
I thank the distinguished representative of Brazil, and now I give the floor to the distinguished representative of Germany.
Mesdames les co-chairs, Excellences,
Co-chairs, Excellencies,
supports the realization of the right of the Palestinian people to self-determination and the Palestinian people's endeavors to obtain their own state. At the same time, Germany assumes a special responsibility towards Israel as a Jewish and democratic state and for Israel's security. For that reason, Germany firmly believes that the goal of an independent, democratic, and viable Palestinian state existing side by side in peace and security with Israel can only be achieved through negotiations. Only a negotiated two-state solution that is acceptable to both sides will bring about lasting peace and lasting security. Having said this, Germany is already building the Palestinian state every single day by working on the foundations and on the future institutions of such a state. This commitment is underpinned by substantial funding and political support. We haven't made up our mind yet on which working group we will focus, but I will just briefly sketch out a few things a few ideas we are working on. First, humanitarian assistance. Germany stands by the Palestinian people and has provided life-saving assistance of more than $370 370 million US dollars since October 7, and we really hardly push for unhindered humanitarian access into Gaza. Secondly, on development and institution building, Germany is and remains one of Palestine's largest bilateral donors with a current portfolio of more than 900 million US dollars. That goes down to, we support municipalities and we are very active in the water sector, as well as education, vocational training and work program. But apart from the money, this is also a political commitment because it shows that we treat the PA as the legitimate and only government of the Palestinian people. And it underlines what Norway, Japan, and Morocco said, that for a political solution, you also need an economic backbone. Thirdly, we understand the necessity to strengthen security arrangements, which are important to the Palestinian people and to the State of Israel at the same time. We support both in cash and in kind the Office of the Security Coordinator, the EU Border Assistance Mission, EUBAM Rafah, and the EU Police Mission in the Palestinian territories, EUPOL COPS. Fourth, Germany is and remains actively engaged to preserve the physical space for the two-state solution by co-chairing, as we speak, the West Bank Protection Consortium. This tool includes the marches, be it against illegal settlement activities, be it in order to assure the implementation of projects, including in Area C. But our daily activities also include field trips, public statements, and the full implementation of EU sanctions against extremist settlers. Fifth, in the normative space, as set out in the advisory opinion of the ICJ, Germany follows the practice established by the EU, according to which all products imported from the West Bank that originate from Israeli settlements need to be clearly labeled as such. Israeli institutions that implement activities in the illegal settlements are being excluded from funding by European and German government programs in the field of culture, education, and research. Last, not least, when it comes to narrative, we actively contribute to building peace and social coherence by supporting dialogue, civil society, and shared society initiatives. In the end, acceptance on both sides is needed and necessary for a lasting peace. Many thanks.
I thank the representative of Germany and I give the floor to the representative of Nicaragua. Thank you very much, co-facilitators. We're grateful for the convening of this preparatory meeting and the establishment of the 8 working groups, their aims and their requests for information. We hope that the establishment of these groups will contribute effectively to a successful conference. We trust that this will be an inclusive process that is also transparent in terms of its procedures and in how the lists are managed. This is important in order to ensure the equality of the sovereign rights of every state. Co-facilitators. The people of Nicaragua and Nicaragua have always supported the just cause of the Palestinian people. This is a principles-based issue of their equality as brothers facing a struggle. Nicaragua believes that one of the first steps to ensure effective outcomes from this important conference is the full recognition of the state of Palestine. The narrative of the two-state solution, in the narrative of the two-state solution, it's important that we flag the following. The recognition of the state of Palestine and accepting its request to be a full member of the Security Council is a contribution to peace and to the permanent political solution. This recognition is needed to bring an end to the genocide of the Palestinian people. It's important to clarify that even when we have the best intentions, in the two-state solution. When we only recognize one of these two states and we fail to recognize the other, this action is inconsistent with the political reality because it's not impartial and it solely favors the state that it recognizes. To ensure that we are consistent, those states that say that they accept the two-state solution should also recognize those two states, so as to achieve a true political solution and lasting peace in the Middle East. Solely recognizing one state doesn't contribute to peace and continues to deny the existence of the State of Palestine and the inalienable rights of the Palestinian people to their freedom and to their self-determination. Latin America and the Caribbean are fighting colonialism and foreign imposition have been for centuries. The vast majority of states from our region, indeed 20 from 51 states, and for that reason our region has always supported decolonization, has always supported the right to freedom, to self-determination and independence for our peoples in Africa and in Asia. Currently, 32 states from Latin America and the Caribbean of the 33 fully recognize the State of Palestine. We're only missing one state in the region that does not recognize Palestine. We hope that other regions will increase their recognition of Palestine. Nicaragua will never let up in its unconditional support for Palestine. We will continue all efforts under international law and through the International Court of Justice until we achieve the freedom of Palestine. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have heard the last speaker for this meeting. May I remind delegations that any written comments can be submitted to the contact points from our missions. I thank delegations for their attendance and participation this morning. Before adjourning the meeting, I would like to inform delegations that we will hear from the co-chairs of the remaining working groups this afternoon at 3 p.m. in this chamber. I also have a number of countries that did not have the opportunity to speak now, so we can hear you and we can listen to you in the afternoon. Thank you very much. The meeting is adjourned.